That hideous green Woody convertible from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles wasn't just a prop. It was a rare factory-built disaster that Chrysler executives desperately tried to distance themselves from, featuring technology borrowed from children's toys, drilled with 300 holes for fake wood, and powered by an engine so problematic mechanics would refuse to work on it. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles 1983 Chrysler LeBaron Wagon. Fact 1. It was actually a 1986 model, not 1983. If you've ever looked up trivia about the car from Planes and Trains and Automobiles, you've probably seen it listed as a 1983 Chrysler LeBaron. That's become the accepted story, repeated across countless websites and movie forums. But here's the twist that even die-hard fans might not know. The main car featured throughout most of the film was actually a 1986 model, not an 83. This isn't just a minor detail or mistake in record keeping. The 1986 LeBaron Town and Country convertible had distinct visual characteristics that set it apart from the earlier models, and if you know what to look for, you can spot them right there on screen. The most obvious giveaway is the redesigned front end that Chrysler introduced for the '86 model year. The company gave the car a more aerodynamic look with rounded headlight assemblies, softer fender corners, and a reshaped bumper cover. The earlier models from '83 through '85 had a much boxier, angular appearance up front. But perhaps the most definitive proof is that federally mandated third brake light mounted on the trunk lid. Starting in 1986, all new cars sold in the United States were required to have a center high-mounted stop lamp, often called the CHMSL. If you watch the movie carefully during the scenes after the car has been through its various disasters, you can see that distinctive third brake light sitting right there on the trunk. The earlier '83 through '85 models simply didn't have this feature because it wasn't yet required by law. So while the replica cars and collector vehicles often get marketed as '83 models, the actual hero car that Del Griffith drove through most of the movie's memorable scenes was definitely from 1986. Fact 2. Only 1,105 were ever made. When you think of rare collectible cars, your mind probably jumps to exotic Italian supercars or limited edition sports cars that were intentionally produced in tiny numbers to maintain exclusivity. But here's something that might surprise you. The Chrysler LeBaron Town and Country convertible with its distinctive fake wood paneling is actually rarer than many of those high-dollar exotics. Chrysler only produced this particular Woody convertible for 4 model years, from 1983 through 1986, and across that entire production run, they manufactured just 1,105 total units. To put that in perspective, that's fewer than many limited edition supercars that sell for millions of dollars today. The numbers tell an interesting story about how this car went from being a publicity-generating novelty to a complete market failure. In 1983, the first year of production, Chrysler managed to sell 1,521 of these Woody convertibles, which represented almost 10% of all LeBaron convertible production that year. But from there, it was a steady decline. By 1984, that number had already started dropping. The 1985 model year saw even fewer sales. And by the time 1986 rolled around, which would be the final year for the Woody convertible, Chrysler only managed to move 501 units. That final year production number of just 501 cars makes the '86 model particularly rare today. For collectors, this scarcity has created an interesting situation where a car that was considered somewhat ridiculous and embarrassing when it was new has now become genuinely hard to find, especially in good condition, making it a true oddity in automotive history. Fact 3. Chrysler demanded all branding be removed. When John Hughes and his production team approached Chrysler about using the LeBaron Town and Country convertible in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, they probably expected the automaker to jump at the chance for some free publicity in what was sure to be a major Hollywood release. After all, product placement in movies was already big business by 1987. But Lee Iacocca and the other executives at Chrysler had a very different reaction once they learned exactly what would happen to their cars in the film. They would be crushed between semi-trucks on the highway, driven the wrong way into oncoming traffic, pulled over by the police in a burnt-out shell of a vehicle, and generally treated as what the script itself called a clown car. The optics of showing one of their products being destroyed and humiliated on screen didn't sit well with the company leadership. Chrysler's solution was to grant permission for the cars to be used, but only under one very specific condition. Every single Chrysler badge, logo, and piece of identifying trim had to be removed from the vehicles. They didn't want audiences making any direct connection between the disasters happening on screen and their actual product line. The production team complied, stripping off all the Chrysler Pentastar emblems and LeBaron nameplates. But they couldn't just leave the cars completely blank, so they created fictional badging to replace what they'd removed. The movie cars received special hood ornaments with a simple letter D, and the filmmakers invented a completely fake manufacturer name, Grand Detroit. The fictional full name became the Grand Detroit Farm and Country Turbo, which was close, enough to the real town and country name to be funny, but different enough to satisfy Chrysler's legal concerns. Fact 4. 6 different cars were used and destroyed. Movie productions that involve destroying vehicles face an interesting challenge. They need multiple copies of the same car because you can't exactly uncrash or unburn a vehicle after filming a scene. For planes, trains, and automobiles, the production team knew they'd need several cars to make it through all the punishment that the script called for. What's fascinating is how they went about acquiring and preparing these vehicles, because the solution reveals just how rare and undesirable the actual town and country Woody convertibles were, even when the movie was being filmed. The production ended up using a total of 6 different convertibles throughout the shoot. But here's the surprising part. They couldn't find enough actual LeBaron town and country Woodies to destroy. And even if they could have, nobody wanted to sacrifice these rare cars for a movie. So instead, the team tracked down regular, plain Jane Chrysler LeBaron convertibles and Dodge 600 convertibles that didn't have any wood trim at all. They chose the Dodge 600 for some shots because it was mechanically identical to the LeBaron, built on the same platform, but had a body that was 6 inches longer, which gave slightly different proportions for certain scenes. Once they had these plain convertibles, the crew painted them all in that distinctive pea-green color and then applied the fake wood trim panels afterward. This meant they were essentially creating their own fake town and country conversions specifically for the movie. The irony is pretty rich. They were taking regular cars and adding fake wood trim to them, which is exactly what Chrysler had done with the real town and country models in the first place, just with less precision and care, since these cars were destined for destruction anyway. Fact 5. The voice alert used speak and spell technology. One of the running gags throughout planes, trains, and automobiles involves the car's talking electronic voice alert system, which delivers robotic warnings to Steve Martin and John Candy's characters as they drive the increasingly damaged vehicle across the Midwest. What makes this feature even more amusing is knowing where the technology actually came from and what else was using that same synthetic voice. The electronic voice alert system, which Chrysler abbreviated as EVA, used linear predictive coding speech chips manufactured by Texas Instruments. If that company name sounds familiar in this context, there's a good reason. Texas Instruments was also the maker of the Speak and Spell, one of the most popular electronic learning toys of the 1980s. The Speak and Spell used the exact same voice synthesis technology that Chrysler put into their luxury cars. That distinctive robotic voice that kids heard spelling out words and correcting their mistakes was the same voice telling drivers that a door is ajar or that their lights were on. Chrysler's EVA system could deliver up to 24 different spoken warning messages depending on which version was installed and what options the car had. The system would automatically lower the radio volume whenever it needed to deliver a message, ensuring that drivers couldn't miss its warnings. Some of these messages have become legendary among car enthusiasts, particularly the phrase, "a door is ajar," which confused some people because the voice seemed to be saying the door was ajar, like a container, rather than ajar, meaning partially open. The system was considered cutting-edge technology when it debuted in 1983. but it quickly became more annoying than helpful for many owners. The constant reminders to fasten seatbelts, close doors, and check various systems wore thin pretty quickly, which is why Chrysler eventually added a shutoff switch in the glove box so owners could silence the talking car. Fact 6. Creative Industries drilled 300 holes per car. Converting a regular Chrysler LeBaron convertible into a town and country Woody involved a lot more work than just slapping some fake wood panels onto the sides of the car. The process was actually pretty involved, and from an engineering standpoint, somewhat destructive. Chrysler didn't build the wood trim components into the assembly line at their main manufacturing plant. Instead, they contracted the conversion work out to a company called Creative Industries, which was located in southeast Michigan. The system worked like this. Chrysler would build complete LeBaron convertibles at their assembly plant in St. Louis, then ship the finished cars to Creative Industries for the Woody conversion. Once the cars arrived at Creative Industries, workers would take these brand new, pristine convertibles and proceed to drill 300 holes into each one. That's not a typo or an exaggeration. 300 holes per car, with 150 holes drilled into each side. These holes were necessary to attach all the plastic wood grain trim pieces that created the town and country look. The fake wood components consisted of fiberglass framing pieces that were supposed to look like white ash and Dynoc vinyl film that mimicked marine-grade teak. All of these pieces needed to be securely fastened to the body panels, and that meant a lot of drilling. According to someone who worked at Creative Industries and later commented on a video about these cars, they would take perfectly good, brand new cars and drill 300 holes in them, which seemed almost criminal from a manufacturing perspective. The wood trim pieces themselves were borrowed from the LeBaron Town and Country station wagon, which had been using similar fake wood styling since 1977. Creative Industries had to modify the wagon components slightly to fit the convertible's different body lines and proportions. The whole process added significant cost and time to each car's production, which helped explain why the Town and Country convertible cost nearly double what a regular LeBaron coupe sold for. Fact 7. The green paint was a John Hughes tribute. Movie fans who know their John Hughes filmography might experience a moment of déjà vu when they see that green Woody car rolling across the screen in planes, trains, and automobiles. The color looks strangely familiar, like they've seen it somewhere before in another Hughes film. That's not a coincidence or an accident. The distinctive pea green paint job on the LeBaron convertible was a deliberate tribute and inside joke referencing another iconic car from the John Hughes universe. 4 years before Planes, Trains, and Automobiles hit theaters, Hughes had written the screenplay for National Lampoon's Vacation, the 1983 comedy starring Chevy Chase as Clark Griswold. In that movie, the Griswold family embarks on their cross-country road trip in the Wagon Queen family truckster, a hideous, oversized station wagon covered in fake wood paneling and painted in a ghastly shade of green that looked like something between pea soup and pond scum. That car became one of the most memorable vehicles in comedy film history, instantly recognizable and synonymous with suburban family vacation disasters. When Hughes was preparing Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, he specifically chose to paint the LeBaron convertibles in that same shade of green as a visual callback to the family truckster. He was creating a subtle connection between the two films, linking them through their use of ridiculous green Woody vehicles as symbols of travel gone wrong. The wood paneling on both cars added to the connection, making them spiritual siblings in the John Hughes cinematic universe. It's the kind of detail that most viewers might not consciously notice, but it creates a subconscious link between the films for anyone who's seen both movies. The choice also had a practical benefit. That particular shade of green looked absolutely terrible, which was perfect for a car that needed to appear as unappealing and unfortunate as possible while still being funny rather than just sad. Fact 8. Lee Iacocca's personal project that flopped. The story of how the LeBaron Town and Country convertible came to exist is inseparably linked to one of the automotive industry's most powerful and famous executives. Lee Iacocca, who had become chairman and CEO of Chrysler Corporation in 1979, was the driving force behind the K-car platform that saved the company from bankruptcy. By the early 1980s, Chrysler's fortunes had turned around dramatically, and Iacocca wielded enormous influence over every aspect of the company's operations. When Iacocca said, "Do it," things got done, no questions asked. At Chrysler's request, a company called Creative Industries had built a prototype LeBaron convertible with the fake woodside trim as a kind of experimental showcase piece, a callback to the elegant Chrysler town and country convertibles from the 1940s. When Iacocca saw this woody K-car prototype, he immediately loved it and ordered Hal Sperlich, who was president of Chrysler at the time, to send it straight into production for the 1983 model year. The car was ready for showrooms in early 1983, and Iacocca made sure it got maximum publicity. When Time magazine featured him on the cover as Detroit's comeback kid in March of 1983, the photograph showed Iacocca with a LeBaron town and country convertible. That's how important this car was to his personal vision. But despite Iacocca's enthusiasm and the publicity the car generated, it was a commercial failure. The Town and Country convertible was priced at $15,595 for its mid-year 1983 introduction, which was nearly twice as much as a LeBaron coupe. Sales started at 1,521 units in '83, but dwindled steadily year after year, ending with just 501 cars in 1986 before Chrysler quietly discontinued the woody convertible. Fact 9. The engine had a notorious bad reputation. Under the hood of many of these LeBaron Town and Country convertibles lurked an engine that would eventually become infamous among mechanics and owners for all the wrong reasons. For the 1983 model year, all Town and Country convertibles came standard with a 2.6-liter four-cylinder engine sourced from Mitsubishi. This engine produced just 93 horsepower, which was pretty anemic even by early 1980s standards, especially for a car that weighed 2,530 pounds. But the lack of power was actually the least of this engine's problems. The Mitsubishi 2.6, which Chrysler marketed with Hemi 2.6 badges because it had hemispherical combustion chambers, developed a truly terrible reputation for reliability as these cars aged. The timing chain, sprockets, and guides in these engines often went bad prematurely. And when they did, metal shavings would circulate through the oil system and essentially kill the engine from the inside. Head gaskets failed regularly, camshafts would snap, and cylinder heads were prone to cracking. The engine also featured something called jet valves, which were supposed to improve emissions, but instead created another point of failure that caused nothing but headaches. These reliability issues were so well known and so problematic that some mechanics would actually refuse to work on cars with a 2.6-liter Mitsubishi engine. Owners would bring their LeBaron or Caravan into a shop. The mechanic would pop the hood, see that engine, and essentially say, "No thanks. Take it somewhere else." The engine was notoriously difficult to service properly, with components located in hard-to-reach places, including an oil filter mounted on the backside of the engine that was almost impossible to access. Chrysler eventually replaced this engine with their own 2.5-liter four-cylinder, which was more powerful and far more reliable. But for the early years of the Town and Country convertible, that troublesome Mitsubishi engine was the only option available. Fact 10. The wood was designed to fade like real wood. One of the most distinctive characteristics of surviving Chrysler LeBaron Town and Country convertibles today is how the fake wood trim has faded, bleached, and weathered over the decades. On many examples, the Dynoc vinyl that's supposed to look like marine teak has turned pale and washed out from years of sun exposure, giving these cars an even more tired and pathetic appearance than they had when new. What's fascinating about this is the ongoing debate over whether Chrysler actually engineered this fading effect on purpose, or if it was just an unintended consequence that the company later tried to spin as intentional. According to some accounts, Chrysler engineers actually formulated the vinyl material to fade from sun exposure in a way that would mimic how real wood ages and weathers naturally over time. The idea was that as the fake wood got older and more sun-bleached, it would develop a weathered patina similar to authentic wooden boat trim that had spent years exposed to the elements. If this is true, it would mean Chrysler actually invested research and development time into making their fake wood look authentically fake in an aged, distressed way. However, many automotive historians and Chrysler enthusiasts are skeptical of this claim. They argue that Chrysler simply got lucky with how the vinyl happened to fade, and the company later spun this unintended consequence into a feature rather than a bug. After all, if you're going to put fake wood on a car and it starts looking terrible after a few years of sun exposure, you might as well claim that's exactly what you intended to happen all along. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Chrysler certainly knew the vinyl would fade eventually, because all exterior vinyl materials degrade under ultraviolet light. Whether they specifically engineered the fading pattern to look like aged wood or just accepted it as inevitable is harder to prove. Either way, the end result is that these cars develop a very specific look as they age, one that's become part of their character and identity. Fact 11. Some movie cars were actually Dodge. 600s. If you're a real car enthusiast with a sharp eye for automotive details, you might notice something odd while watching planes, trains, and automobiles. In certain scenes, the proportions of the car look slightly different. The body seems a bit longer, the rear end appears more stretched out, and if you freeze frame at just the right moment, the taillights don't quite match what they should be on a Chrysler LeBaron. That's because some of the cars used during filming weren't actually LeBarons at all. They were Dodge 600s, the LeBaron's corporate sibling, which shared the same basic platform but came with a body that was 6 inches longer. The Dodge 600 was essentially a stretched version of the LeBaron, built to offer a bit more rear seat room and a slightly more upscale appearance. When the production team was rounding up cars for the movie, they grabbed whatever they could find from the Chrysler family of convertibles built on the K-car platform. Since both the LeBaron and the 600 used the same basic structure and components, and since they were planning to paint them all green and add fake wood trim anyway, it made sense to use whatever was available and affordable. The 600's longer wheelbase and body actually gave the car slightly better proportions in some ways, making the stubby K-car design look a little less awkward. But it also created continuity issues that sharp-eyed viewers can spot if they know what to look for. In some scenes, you can see the 600's distinctive taillights, which were different from the LeBaron's design. The longer body is most noticeable in side view shots where you can see more space between the doors and the rear wheels. The production team did their best to disguise these differences with the paint and wood trim, but the cars were fundamentally different lengths, and there's no way to completely hide that on camera. Fact 12. The car featured multi-language voice alerts. The electronic voice alert system wasn't just a quirky American feature that Chrysler included to show off their technological capabilities. The company actually adapted and localized this talking car technology for different markets around the world, creating versions that could communicate with drivers in multiple languages. For cars sold in Canada, Chrysler developed a bilingual EV system that could speak both English and French, switching between languages based on settings or regional requirements. This was necessary to comply with Canadian regulations and market expectations, since Canada is officially a bilingual country. For vehicles exported to Mexico, the system was programmed to speak Spanish, delivering all 24 of its various warning messages in a robotic Spanish voice. This multi-language capability shows how seriously Chrysler took the EVA technology, at least initially, investing the time and resources to create localized versions rather than just selling English-only systems everywhere. The way the system worked was consistent across all languages. When it needed to deliver a warning message, the EVA would automatically lower the radio volume to make sure the driver could hear what it was saying. It would interrupt whatever music or talk radio program you were listening to, cut the volume down, and deliver its message about your door being ajar, your lights being on, or your seatbelt being unfastened. Then it would restore the radio volume and go back to monitoring the car's systems. While this seemed like a clever feature in theory, In practice, it drove many owners absolutely crazy. Having your music constantly interrupted by a robotic voice telling you things you already knew got old very quickly. The problem became so widespread and the complaints so numerous that Chrysler had to add a shutoff switch in the glove compartment of later models, allowing owners to permanently disable the voice alerts while keeping the visual warning lights functioning. Fact 13. It was the first factory American convertible in 6 years. To understand why the LeBaron convertible was such a big deal when it debuted, you need to know some context about what had happened to convertibles in America during the 1970s. By the middle of that decade, the American automotive industry had essentially decided that convertibles were dead. A combination of factors killed them off. Concerns about rollover safety regulations that never actually materialized, the rise of air conditioning making open-air driving less appealing, and the general trend toward more practical, utilitarian vehicles during the energy crisis years. The last factory-built American convertible rolled off an assembly line in 1976. It was a Cadillac Eldorado, and it was marketed as the final convertible, with dealers and collectors treating it as a historic last-of-its-kind vehicle. After 1976, if you wanted a convertible, you had to buy a European or Japanese car, or you had to take a regular American car to an aftermarket conversion company that would cut the roof off and reinforce the structure. Then Lee Iacocca arrived at Chrysler and decided that Americans still wanted convertibles, regulations, or no regulations. Under his direction, Chrysler introduced the LeBaron convertible in early 1982 for that model year, making it the first factory-built American convertible since that final Cadillac Eldorado 6 years earlier. This wasn't just a minor product launch. It was a statement about American automotive design and consumer desires. Chrysler made the LeBaron convertible first, before the Woody Town & Country version came along. The basic convertible was available for all of 1982, proving that there was indeed a market for open-top American cars. The success of that base model gave Iacocca the confidence to approve the Town & Country Woody version for 1983. The LeBaron convertible's reintroduction helped revive the entire American convertible market. Other manufacturers took notice and started developing their own convertible models again. Fact 14. Complete cars were shipped for wood trim installation. The manufacturing process for the LeBaron Town & Country convertible reveals something interesting about how Chrysler approached this specialty model and why it cost so much more than a regular LeBaron. Rather than integrating the wood trim installation into the main assembly line workflow, which would have been the most efficient approach, Chrysler set up a completely separate conversion process that added time, cost, and complexity to producing each Woody convertible. The process started at Chrysler's assembly plant in St. Louis, where LeBaron and Dodge 400 convertibles were built on the K-Car platform. Workers at this plant would assemble complete, fully functional convertibles with all their mechanical components, interior trim, paint, and finishing touches. These were finished cars, ready to be shipped to dealers and sold to customers. But for the cars destined to become Town & Country Woodies, the journey wasn't over yet. Instead of going to dealers, these complete convertibles were loaded onto car carriers and transported to Creative Industries, a conversion company located in southeast Michigan. At Creative Industries, workers would receive these brand new, pristine convertibles and begin the process of transforming them into Woody models. The wood trim components had already been created and used on the LeBaron Town & Country station wagon since 1977, so Creative Industries had the parts and templates available. But those wagon components needed modifications to fit properly on the convertible's different body lines and proportions. The fiberglass framing pieces that mimicked white ash had to be adapted to work with the convertible's doors and fenders. The Dynoc vinyl film panels had to be cut and fitted to match the convertible's shape. Once Creative Industries finished installing all the wood trim, the cars would be shipped again, this time to dealerships where they'd finally be sold to customers. This multi-step process added significant cost to each vehicle and helps explain the nearly $16,000 price tag. Fact 15. replicas now sell for six figures. The transformation of the LeBaron town and country convertible from automotive punchline to collectible cult classic is one of those strange twists that sometimes happens with cars that were originally considered failures or embarrassments. When these cars were new in the 1980s, they were expensive, slow-selling oddities that most people either ignored or actively made fun of. The idea that someone would pay serious money for one of these Woody K cars would have seemed absurd. But the lasting popularity of planes, trains, and automobiles changed everything. The movie became a beloved Thanksgiving tradition, watched by millions of people every year as they gather with family for the holiday. Del Griffith's burnt-out green Woody became an iconic movie car, recognizable and memorable in a way that very few vehicles achieve. This cultural status started to rub off on the actual cars, transforming them from embarrassments into nostalgic pieces of 1980s pop culture. In June of 2019, Barrett-Jackson held their Northeast auction at the Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut, and one of the featured vehicles was a meticulously crafted replica of the movie car. This wasn't an actual screen-used car from the film, since those had been destroyed during production. Instead, someone had taken a 1983 Chrysler LeBaron convertible with 82,446 original miles and transformed it into a faithful recreation of the Grand Detroit Farm and Country Turbo. The car was finished in that distinctive country green paint with the fake wood side panels and the special D-hood ornament. It included movie memorabilia touches like a rear-mounted travel trunk covered in stickers. Most impressively, it was equipped with the Texas Instruments electronic voice alert system that could deliver 24 different messages. While the final auction price wasn't disclosed in all reports, the fact that Barrett-Jackson featured this replica as a noteworthy lot at a major auction demonstrates how the film elevated this oddball car's status from automotive embarrassment to legitimate collectible, legitimate collectible, legitimate collectible, legitimate collectible.